We're actually going to start with what is probably a good day for a lot of Chelsea fans. 58% of the poll so far has voted for it. But Graham Potter sacked. It looks like the club your club want to turn around and bring somebody in new straight away. Lorenzo, give me your thoughts on it.
Oh well, where can I even start? Because it's kind of been a bit of an S show since the start of the season, really. Obviously, we sacked Tuchel in September, and everyone's like, "Well, what the flip?" Then we pay like £21 million to get all of Brighton coaching staff, and now they're in the top half, and we're flipping 11th. And yeah, I think I like the guy. I have no personal issue with the guy. I think he's a nice man. He's probably a bit too nice for a job of this caliber. I think that is maybe where a lot of the problems stem from, if I'm being honest. But I think we've got to a point where it's just become untenable, because if too many fans, apparently too many of the board members, and apparently too many of the players don't really believe in him turning it around, well, then are you ever going to turn it around? Now, it's difficult. Obviously, some Chelsea fans, especially the ones that at the back, they always said, well, look at Arteta, he struggled at the beginning, and in the end, look at you guys now. It came good in the end. I don't know if it's the same thing, man. Potter didn't learn from Pep, number one. And also he's not an ex-captain and all sorts of things. So there isn't that connection. And he also didn't follow up a Champions League winner. Do you know what I mean? Like, Arteta came in after Arsenal were struggling for a while. They had already fallen out of the top four for a while. We were in the top four pretty much all the time, with a few exceptions. Won the Champions League. Yes, the last league win is a little while back now, but still, we were always somewhat competitive. And to then go into just, the lads gave everything when we just keep on losing. Like, what was the stat? We won 3 out of 22 Premier League games or something. That's 3 out of 22. Like I understand you can't have a great season every season, but come on now, we're still Chelsea. Look at what players we have. Even before we spent £600 million, look at the players we have. We should not be winning 3 in 22, should we? But yeah, the timing though. This ownership seems to not be very good at timing the sacking of managers. I mean, we just had an international break, and you were 1 loss away from sacking him. You might as well have sacked him before then. Why now then? I don't understand. But hey, better late than never, I suppose. And if we get a good replacement in time, at least whoever that new manager may be, hopefully Nagelsmann, we'll have a couple of months to look at the squad and make decisions on what he needs in the summer as well. Because what's the point if a new manager comes in June? He only sees the squad in pre-season, and then only through pre-season can he decide, okay, I want the DM, I want the striker, I want this, I want that. And then they only join in August, and we have the same issue all over again if we're going to complain all season. Yeah, but the players need to settle in and this and that. And if he joins now, we can sign the players in June and start pre-season with new players. In theory, obviously, that's the ideal world. But yeah, like I say, it's actually 7 wins from 22. Okay, if Oshok, sorry, in the chat is right. Maybe I mixed the.
Let me say this though.
But even still,
Arteta comparison
is no better, is it?
The Arteta comparison is a false narrative. Like, you can only compare him based on the fact that Arteta didn't actually start off that bad. He started off playing pragmatic football, and we got us an FA Cup. It only really started to go bad the following season when you kind of seen that he had to change it up a little bit more, and we tried to play a little bit more expansive, and we weren't prepared for that. You could see early signs that what Mikel Arteta was trying to do was to try to change the situation at the club, where Graham Potter, you guys weren't going to change your culture so easily without everybody in unison. And to be honest, you didn't have that level of consistency from the top down, and I wouldn't expect him to get everything right away. Now, I would more or less compare it to Unai Emery, where Unai Emery came in right after Arsene Wenger, had all the pressure, and now that the next guy will have less pressure on him coming in after Potter, because the floor has been dropped down so low, where your expectations on the season is basically gone, no pressure. And next season, if you guys do well with this team, you could do a little bit better. But to me, it doesn't matter what you guys do this season. It's not salvageable. The people who think you guys are going to win the Champions League with this team, with the unrest, having 2 managers sacked, the players that aren't even scoring enough goals, I think is kind of delusional. And I don't think you're in that category of people who think you can win the Champions League. And when it comes to Todd Bowley, he's the real issue. Are we going to see him make the right decisions going forward and hire the right people? Because at the end of the day, you can sack all these managers, but the guy at the top is the one that's making the decisions and messing up your football club. That's
the next problem, right? That's the next problem, because we hired Potter before we hired pretty much all of the football experienced advisors that Potter hired for himself, whether it's Christopher Vivell or Lawrence Stewart or Paul Wistanley. All of those guys were all hired after Potter. Now, they were probably somewhat, told about it. Yeah, you've got to be working with Graham Potter, and they somewhat were a lot, aboard with that. But they weren't the guys making the decision. I still don't know, and I'm a Chelsea fan, and I follow everything that there is in terms of news. And I'm still not sure who actually the people were that advised Bowley to get Potter. Now, I'm not saying that it's a completely ridiculous decision at the time. I think most people in football, also other clubs, not just fans, were all very appreciative of Graham Potter and thought he was doing a very good job at Brighton and a very good manager that would probably take a next step to a bigger club soon. But the gap between Brighton and Chelsea was potentially too big. I also feel a bit bad for the guy because we might have ruined the guy's career. He could have been next England manager. He might still.
Nah, he's good. He's good.
Well,
Is he getting paid out?
Via Spurs, right? Like, we got him as this next big thing. And what? His next biggest job since then is God knows what it's been. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to ask the panel this question. You talk about next problems. Do people, there's a quote here actually from Fabrizio Romano that says that Chelsea want a manager immediately. They are going to take today and tomorrow and the next few days to speak to managers. Nagelsmann is considered perfect for Chelsea, and Chelsea are actually tempting him now. Is Nagelsmann the right person, JJ? Do you feel that, £50 million it's going to cost? There was reports from Matt Law yesterday that they may not have to pay the whole compensation. David Ornstein has said no, they are. They're paying all that money out. So it's cost 70 million to bring him in and get him out. That's going to eat into your budgets. Nagelsmann, is he right for this squad? Is he right for Chelsea? Do you think they'll get it correct this time?
I don't know, man. I'm looking at Chelsea, and they're going to have to spend money regardless of the situation now. Whether it's on players, whether it's a manager, you spent so much money now, 50 million in comparison to the 600 million that you spent. You just got to spend a bit more now. It's like businesses go through this. When you spend so much, when your outlay's been that amount of money, the only way to solve it now, if it hasn't worked, is you've got to chuck more money at it, and you get into this vicious cycle. I'm looking at Chelsea, and I don't know what direction they've tried to go in. Like, do they go and get a project manager like a Nagelsmann that's going to need 2-3 seasons to get up and running? Or do they go and get a manager that's going to win now? I think Tuchel's probably like the in-between type of manager, but Chelsea have been most successful when they've just got an Ancelotti or got someone that just knows I can win tomorrow, next day, and he does it. And if he doesn't, you're out. I don't know how the fans, how the club actually cope with having a project manager, because you're going to have to suffer like an Arsenal. You're going to have to suffer like a Tottenham or like a Liverpool now, where you're having to go and restart the project. Chelsea are not used to that. Chelsea have been the most successful club in the last decade. The way they've done it has been very unorthodox. So they're going to have to go down that unorthodox route again, in my opinion. They're going to have to go and find a manager that can come in and just win straight away. And if it doesn't work, they've got to start sacking. But then they get into that whole cycle where people don't like that model and that kind of route. So it's a difficult one. I personally, I don't know what type of manager they'll go for, because they're such a unique proposition when it comes to like football teams and tactics and kind of managerial appointments in general.
Yeah, do you know what? Like my 10 penneth, I actually think I like Nagelsmann. A lot of people say he's overrated. I really like him. They absolutely need a project manager with the squad that just spent £600 million on, because it's very young. The squad's young. This is not a squad full of old men. They need someone that's no good for Jose. It's no good for a Conte. I don't think he's any good for a Diego Simeone, because the profile of player isn't right. And I'm talking purely age profile, not pedigree or ability, just the age. Nagelsmann's the right guy. And I think there's a quality manager in there. The fact that Todd Bowley and his group have essentially modeled they've modeled everything on the RB model. It just makes sense. It's almost perfect. Luis Enrique, I think, is a better manager, but again, he could handle these players and get a tune out of them. But I just look at the backroom staff, the people they've brought into the club. Nagelsmann would walk in and feel at home, I think. At a board level, I think he'd walk in and feel at home with no people. It's almost a match made in heaven. And I was talking to Jess last night. This was her view. I'm stealing it, so I wanted to make that very clear. I think Nagelsmann being sacked didn't help Potter from his perspective of keeping his job, because he's now available. If he hadn't been sacked, maybe Potter would have hung on a little bit longer. And the fact that he's straight away the number one target, he's the first guy that Chelsea have gone out and spoke to. For me, I would bet a lot of money on Nagelsmann being the first guy that's offered the contract from them. But like, Patty, how do you see this game, bro?
Yeah, I'm annoyed, man, because obviously Nagelsmann was my number one candidate. Like, he was my number one pick. And obviously, let's be real, if there's Tottenham and Chelsea, of course the manager will definitely look and sound out Chelsea before Tottenham. So it's quite annoying and frustrating. I did see some posts saying that Chelsea looked at Nagelsmann and they feel that he's too young. I'm not sure where they came from and if there's any truth in it, but I did see that floating around on Twitter and posted in a few of the group chats earlier. But I don't know if there's any legs to that. But yeah, Nagelsmann's a perfect fit, a brilliant manager. He's only 35, but he's already improved, well, two teams. Obviously, Bayern didn't really go to... It's a tough one because we say it didn't go to plan, but when you actually look at it, what he had done there, he was only 1 point off the top of the league, got them through to the Champions League quarters. He had won 8 out of 8. They were firing in all cylinders, so it was really strange why they sacked him. But then when you look deeper into it, allegedly he fell out with a lot of the players and he kind of wasn't really good at the man management side of things. So that is something that he's got to take a step back and look at. But he's so young. And yeah, like you said, Terry, I think he'd be I say it through gritted teeth, he'd be the perfect fit for Chelsea considering how young he is. If they give him time, allow him to obviously coach and let the young players flourish, it is a perfect match. But I don't know. I don't understand. Well, none of us know really what Bowley and the guys there are thinking. So we'll have to wait and see.
They do.
Yeah.
I don't think they do, Patrick. But just to get on what you guys are saying, Nagelsmann's one of the best young managers. He is the best young manager in world football. He's 35 years old and has a resume already. It's impressive. And then you go to Hansi Flick, who people are talking about also. You got Luis Enrique. Whoever you bring in, you're not going to give him a 5-year contract. You're not going to make that mistake again. You're going to give him a short contract. So you give yourself an opportunity to get out if things aren't going their way. And the number one thing I think is going to be is the fan base, because I spoke about this when Potter came in, and I'm going to speak about it now. No matter who they bring in, the Chelsea fan base are going to have to be able to understand that there's going to be a period of time where you're going to have to get better. Because with this ownership, there's no history of winning. If this was Roman Abramovich, you can be a little bit more ruthless because you have the people who've been there, done that. But the people at Chelsea right now don't have a resume to say they've ever won anything. So bringing in any manager, you shouldn't be demanding instant success.
I mean, do you, Lowell, from your point of view, are you going to demand instant success? Or are you one of these Chelsea fans that realizes you're not, although you've sacked 2 managers since they've been here, they're not trying to be like Roman. They want a project, but it just hasn't worked yet. Like, how do you see it going, mate?
No, exactly that. I think they do want the project. And I know that sounds super weird considering we sacked 2 managers in the space of 7 months. And there's a lot that was made of the Thomas Tuchel sacking. And you can say, all the media reports were, just briefings from Chelsea, making the public think what Chelsea wanted the public to think in terms of how that went. We talk of personal issues, this and that. But what the reasons for the personal issues were, who knows for sure, right? But there were clearly some. And if the boss don't work with the main employee, well, that's never going to work. No matter the industry, no matter what it is, no matter if he's actually good at the job, if they don't click, if they don't get on, well, unfortunately, that's just the reality. It's sad for us Chelsea fans because we all bonded with Tuchel and obviously won us the Champions League and everything. And then, yeah, I mean, with Potter, like I say, they want a project. And I just hope that they, in a way, the one positive from them waiting this long to sack him, because they could have well sacked him in February, right? Easily in February. But at least waiting until now, as much as that's cost us some points and potentially, a Europa League spot or whatever, by the end of the Premier League season, maybe it's given enough hope to potential future Chelsea fans that they won't just sack every manager. Because us now being 11th, I think a lot of other managers can also appreciate that, yes, even if you want the project, Chelsea Football Club cannot be 11th. Even in the middle of a project, you still can't be 11th. And
yeah. But I wanted to say, just elevating your point, you're right. And there's given a manager time, and I saw the Arteta comparisons, but Arteta was never 11th. Arteta was never Arteta's Arsenal were never this bad. Ralph Rangnick's Man United were never this bad, and you guys just lost all your resilience. It was crazy. So it's about having a bad. But do you feel like, I don't know about, do you feel like the Chelsea fan base, maybe like many others, do you feel like there's a lack of balance in fans? It's always either one strong opinion or another.
1,000,000%. And this fan base, I genuinely see this fan base as so toxic that I wish some players don't even come here because we're just going to ruin your career because you're like 20. The fans are going to expect you to be Cristiano Ronaldo tomorrow, but they're not. Like, of course not. They're 20. Obviously not. It's.
I agree with that point because look at the hate that Modric's getting already. He has an 8-year contract. I'm not calling him a flop after 1 year at any club, let alone at Chelsea when there's no stability.
Like, how can you judge anyone after starting 4 games? It's crazy stuff. But yeah, I do think Nagelsmann is the guy for pretty much a lot of reasons that you guys have touched on already. Like, in terms of what I think Bowley and co, shall I say, are trying to build in terms of, let's make this a young squad. Let's make this a young project. Let's make something new, a bit more, revolutionize it a little bit. With the whole amortizing the contract, giving them all 8-year contracts. Apparently, no one had thought of that before. I'm not sure why no one had thought of that before. It seems like quite an obvious thing.
It's not a good thing.
No one had.
It's not a good thing.
No, because it may not be a good thing, but still, that is obviously a very debatable thing. I think in their logic is we're going to grow the brand so much that we're going to make so much more money in the next 5 years that it's much easier to pay all of those things in 5 years than it is to pay a few of those things now. That's probably the logic. Whether it will work out or not.
But look at it this way, though. Imagine if you gave Bakayoko an 8-year contract when you signed him, and you'd be stuck with him with 8 years instead of however many years you're stuck with him now. It could be a similar situation where if what he's done is he's brought, I said it yesterday, he brought baseball contracts to football, and he doesn't realize that it's not a farm system. You're stuck with these players in and around your first team, and you can't put them in your academy forever. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I think he's still learning the sport, and it comes down to your owner continuously making these bad mistakes.
Before we go to some super chats, I'll just say on that, I think your logic's bang on. That could definitely happen. 100% it could, but the TV deal money gets renegotiated next year, and the zone and the streaming companies want to get involved. I think football fans that cry about the price of players and how much they cost are going to be shocked in the next 4 years, the level the prices are going to go to, because you're talking about TV deals that could put an extra 100 to 150 million pound a year in every Premier League football team's bank account. If that happens, what Chelsea have done will be covered. And I think and they kind of know what's coming down the line because the clubs are all briefed on what deals are going on because they are when you read things like the Premier League want to sanction City, the Premier League is the clubs. So they all know what's going on. They're essentially, it's a 20 entity partnership that 3 teams are added to every year and 3 teams are taken off of when you get relegated. So I get your point, Igal, but financially, the one thing I say about these American billionaires, they're not like the financial side of it, they'll have covered personally. But I think your point makes sense. I want to look at some super chats.